Arizona Territory, 1887. Lena Mae Harper staggered through the back door of the Copper Reach Saloon, Clay Redden's liquor-sour breath chasing her as he slammed her against the wall, knife scraping her jaw. No one moved to help. Men laughed. Women looked away. And the sheriff watched like she was nothing worth saving. Her fingers trembled against the splintered boards, her mind whispering the same truth she'd been running from for years. Maybe I really am alone in this world. Clay pressed closer, blade rising. And in that single heartbeat, Lena wondered if this was where her life finally ended. Before we continue, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, leave your city name in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The piano in Copper Reach's only saloon had long stopped playing, but the noise hadn't settled. Night had a way of making the worst men louder, meaner, and more certain the world belonged to them. Clay Redden was one of those men, broad-shouldered, red-eyed, drunk enough to forget fear, but sober enough to choose cruelty. Lena Mae Harper felt the cold of his shadow before she felt the cold of the blade. "Pretty little thing like you," Clay slurred, nudging the tip of his knife under her chin. "Oughta know better than walking in here without someone to claim you." The room turned quiet in that ugly way, where everyone was listening, but no one intended to help. Lena felt eyes crawl across her skin like insects, curious, amused, hungry. She forced herself not to tremble, though her stomach twisted so hard she thought she might faint right there on the saloon floor. She had nothing left but pride, and even that was fraying. "I don't belong to anyone," she whispered. Clay laughed so loud the tables rattled. "Not yet." The crowd whistled. A chair scraped. Someone muttered, "Virgin girl finally getting her education." Another man snorted, "Waste of time, Clay. She'll faint before you start." Lena's throat tightened. She didn't know why she'd walked in here. Hunger, most likely. She hadn't eaten a full meal in days. She'd been running too long, losing pieces of herself on every mile. But she hadn't expected this, being cornered by a drunk outlaw with the whole town cheering him on. Clay pressed closer. She could smell whiskey, sweat, and something sour. "Come on now," he murmured. "Don't make me teach you slow." Her breath hitched. She felt the room tilt. She thought, with a strange, distant clarity, "This is how it ends. This is what Mama warned me about." Then the room shifted. A presence, quiet, heavy, unhurried, moved through the doorway. Elias Booker didn't belong in this kind of mess. He was the kind of man who spoke only when he had to, worked harder than he talked, kept to himself like it was a vow. Folks called him a ghost of a cowboy. There, but not claimed by the town, not wanted either, except for the cattle he brought to market. But tonight, he walked in like a man with purpose. Clay didn't notice until Elias was close enough to touch him. "What the? Booker, this ain't your business." Elias didn't answer. His eyes, dark, steady, locked on Lena. She felt something inside her tremble again, but it wasn't fear this time. It was shock. Some mix of disbelief and relief that made her knees tremble. Elias finally spoke. "Let her go." Clay barked a laugh. Or what? You think anyone here's gonna back you up, rancher? Elias didn't bother looking around the room. Didn't say I needed anyone. Clay swung the knife toward him, sloppier this time. Elias caught Clay's wrist mid-arc. The room went silent again, but not from amusement this time. Clay's face contorted with drunken rage. You think you can touch me? I think, Elias said calmly, you had your hands on someone who didn't want 'em. That's where you made your mistake. With one motion, quick, practiced, he twisted Clay's arm behind his back and shoved him into the nearest table. Glass shattered. Men stumbled away. Clay roared, struggling, but Elias held him like iron forged by loss. Get off me, Clay spat. You ain't nobody. You ain't even... Elias tightened his grip until Clay choked on his own words. Lena stared, breath shallow, heart racing. She didn't know this man. She'd only seen him twice in passing on the dusty street. But the way he stood there, calm, unmoving, defending her without hesitation, hit her with a force she couldn't name. The doors slammed again, and Sheriff Avery marched in. What's this? His eyes flicked from Clay to the shattered glass, then to Elias. His lip curled. Booker, always you sticking your nose where it shouldn't be. Clay immediately puffed up with triumph. Sheriff, Booker jumped me. Crazy bastards protecting some stray. Lena's stomach sank. She already knew how this would go. Power looked after itself. Sheriff Avery shoved Elias in the shoulder. Turn him loose, Clay didn't do nothing but have a drink. He had a knife on her, Elias said. The sheriff shrugged. Man gets rights in a saloon. Girl like that? Shouldn't be wandering alone. Humiliation burned Lena's throat. She wanted to speak, but her voice felt trapped beneath weeks of fear and hunger. Elias looked at the sheriff, then at Clay, then back at her. Something passed through his expression. Anger, yes, but also something softer, protective. I'm taking her out of here, he said. Sheriff Avery scoffed. She ain't yours. Elias didn't raise his voice. He didn't pull a gun. He simply stepped between Lena and the men who saw her as nothing more than sport. She's coming with me, he repeated. And nobody's laying a hand on her tonight. Clay lunged. Elias moved faster. Clay hit the floor this time, breath punched out of him, knife skittering across the boards. No one cheered. No one stopped Elias either. Lena didn't know why her legs carried her toward him. She didn't know why her chest felt so tight. All she knew was that when Elias put his coat around her shoulders and guided her toward the door, she didn't resist. Her voice finally returned, shaky, small. Why are you helping me? Elias held the door open. His eyes were steady, grounded by a grief older than either of them had words for. Because someone should have, he said softly, long before tonight. Outside, the night air hit her like a baptism. She looked over her shoulder one last time at the saloon, the place she might have died in, and then at the man beside her. For the first time in a long while, hope flickered like a match in the dark, and she followed him into the night. Night wrapped around Copper Reach like a tired blanket, thin in some spots, heavy in others. Lena stumbled beside Elias, her steps unsteady from hunger more than fear now. His coat hung over her shoulders, too big, smelling of leather, horses, and something warm she couldn't name. It felt like safety, and she hadn't felt safe in so long the sensation almost hurt. "You're shaken," Elias said quietly. "I've had a long week," she whispered. Truth was, she'd had a long life, but week was easier to say. They walked past shuttered shops and darkened homes. No one came out to ask if she was all right. No one peeked through curtains. The quiet felt like judgment. Elias guided her toward the doctor's old cabin, now a small medical stop used mostly for ranch accidents and snake bites. A dim lamp burned in the window. "Rosie's awake," he said. "Good sign." Lena didn't know Rosie, but she nodded anyway. Inside, the room smelled of herbs and alcohol. Rosie, a woman with strong arms and tired eyes, looked up from her desk. When she saw Lena, she froze. "Oh, Lord," Rosie breathed. "What did those men do to you?" Lena stiffened, bracing for pity or disgust. She could tolerate disgust. Pity made her want to vanish. Elias answered for her. "Clay had a knife on her. Sheriff did nothing." Rosie's jaw tightened, not at Lena, but at the world. "Course he didn't." Maria, a short, sharp-eyed woman mending a blanket in the corner, glanced up only long enough to take stock of Lena's trembling legs before returning to her stitching. "Sit her down before she falls." Elias led Lena to the small cot against the wall. She sat slowly, afraid the bed might collapse under the weight of her shame. Rosie knelt in front of her, voice gentle but firm. "You hurt anywhere?" Lena shook her head. "Just exhausted." Maria didn't look up from her work when she muttered, "Exhausted is an injury in this town." Elias stood awkwardly near the doorway, hat in hand, clearly unsure if he should stay or go. Lena's heart twisted. He'd dragged her out of hell, but maybe he felt he'd already crossed enough lines for one night. Rosie noticed, too. "Boy, sit down before you wear a hole in the floor." Elias obeyed, lowering himself into a creaky chair, long legs folding with difficulty. Rosie brought Lena a bowl of warm stew, meat, potatoes, a hint of pepper, more food than Lena had seen in days. She stared at it, hands trembling. "You can eat," Rosie encouraged. "It's yours." Lena blinked rapidly, tears threatening. I don't want to be a burden." "You ain't," Rosie said. "Not tonight, not ever, if you stay around decent folk." Lena didn't feel she belonged anywhere, but she lifted the spoon. The first bite nearly broke her. Her throat tightened, eyes burning as warmth spread through her chest. Elias watched quietly. He wasn't staring at her with the hunger or ownership she'd come to fear. He looked at her like he was trying to understand something fragile, something he'd forgotten existed. When the bowl was empty, Rosie stood. "You'll sleep here tonight. Door locks from the inside. No one gets to you." The word sleep hit Lena like a blow. She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept without fear of hoofbeats or footsteps, or men whispering what they'd do if they reached her first. Thank you, she murmured. Maria finally set down her stitching and approached. She handed Lena a folded blanket, patched, faded, but clean. For you, she said simply. It was the simplest kindness, and it nearly destroyed her. Elias rose as if to leave. I should go, he said. Let you rest. A strange ache hit Lena then. Sharp, sudden. She didn't want him to leave. She didn't know him, but she knew the way he'd stepped between her and Clay had changed something inside her. He'd been the first person who didn't demand anything from her. But she didn't stop him. She couldn't. Not yet. He stepped onto the porch, boots thudding softly against the wood. The night air drifted in, carrying the distant hoot of an owl. Rosie waited until the door closed before looking back at Lena. He's a good man. Hard man, but good. Maria snorted. Hard because this town makes him be. Good because he chooses to be. Lena swallowed hard. Why'd he help me? He doesn't even know me. Rosie's voice softened. Maybe he didn't need to. Some folks act on what's right, not what's convenient. Later, after Rosie dimmed the lamp and Maria retired to her room, Lena lay on the cot, sleepless. Her body was safe, fed, wrapped in a patched blanket, but her heart still raced. She closed her eyes. Through the thin wall, she heard something unexpected. Elias Booker's voice, low, barely above a whisper. It wasn't a conversation. There was no one out there with him. It was a prayer. For the lost ones, he murmured softly. For the ones run too long. For those who deserved better than what they got. Her breath caught. For a moment she believed, ridiculously, that he was praying for her. She pressed the blanket to her chest, tears slipping down her temples. No one had prayed for her in years. As she drifted to sleep, she realized something that left her shaken. For the first time since her family died, she didn't feel alone. Morning came softly, sneaking through the thin curtains like it didn't want to frighten anyone. Lena woke slower than usual, her body unsure what to do with the strange luxury of safety. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she smelled Rosie's herbal salve and Maria's strong coffee, and the memories returned like warm tide water. She wasn't on the road anymore. She hadn't run last night. She'd been rescued. The thought was so foreign it almost felt dangerous. She dressed quietly, leaving the borrowed blanket folded at the foot of the cot. Her legs wobbled as she stood, but steadiness returned one breath at a time. When she stepped outside, she found Elias Booker leaning against the porch railing, arms crossed, like he'd been waiting without admitting it. He glanced over. You should have slept longer. I slept enough, she said, though her voice still carried the softness of someone not used to comfort. He studied her for a beat. Lena wasn't sure what he saw. Probably a stray he'd dragged out of trouble, someone who looked more breakable in daylight. She'd never liked being the weak one, but she didn't have the strength to pretend otherwise. Rosie says you'll be all right, he said. But food'll help. He held out a paper-wrapped biscuit. Lena blinked. For me? For you, he confirmed. She took it like she expected it to vanish. "Thank you." He nodded once, then stepped aside from the railing. "I gotta head back to the ranch. Got fences need mendin' before the heat hits. You can stay here today. Rest up." A flicker of panic moved through her chest. Sharp, fast, unexpected. Stay alone? With strangers who were kind, yes, but still strangers. What if Clay came looking? What if the sheriff did? She swallowed hard. "Could I come with you?" Elias didn't answer right away. He looked at her carefully, not unkind, but evaluating. Lena didn't look away. Pride had nearly killed her last night. Today she needed something different. Honesty. Finally he nodded. "If you want." Relief nearly buckled her knees. They walked a quiet road out of Copper Reach, the dusty street waking slowly behind them. As they headed toward the hills, Lena noticed how Elias kept to her left side, between her and the road, between her and any danger she might imagine. He didn't comment on it. He didn't act like a savior. He simply existed like a shelter. When the ranch came into view, a spread of weathered barns, grazing cattle, fences patched with care but not wealth, Lena felt a pinch in her heart. Something about the place felt familiar in a way that had no business feeling familiar. Elias noticed her slowing. "Something wrong?" "No," she murmured. "Just taking it in." He gave a small, thoughtful grunt and led her toward the main barn. They were halfway there when she spotted it, half hidden at the corner of a fence. A carved post, old wood, weather-beaten, worn by years of sun. On it, the faint shape of a symbol, an H crossed by two curved lines, like rivers flowing beneath the letter. Her breath stuttered. She moved toward it before she even realized she was moving. Her fingertips grazed the carving, and something deep inside her chest jolted, like memory, like grief, like recognition. "My mother," she whispered, voice breaking. She wore this symbol on her ring. Elias froze behind her. She didn't look at him. She couldn't. Her throat tightened painfully. She remembered her mother's stories, stories told only at night, when flames were low and grief was quiet. Stories of a homestead near the Twin Watermark, a place her family lost before Lena was old enough to remember. Elias cleared his throat. "That post's been there longer'n me. Don't mean much." "You knew it was here," she said softly. He didn't deny it. He also didn't move closer. Silence stretched between them, not empty, but loaded. Heavy. Like both of them sensed a truth buried deep under the dust, not ready to rise yet. Lena pulled her hand away, chest tight. "Maybe it doesn't mean anything," she said quickly, too quickly. "Maybe lots of folks carve H's." "Maybe," Elias echoed, but his voice wasn't sure at all. They spent the next hour tending the ranch. Elias handed her small tasks, brushing a gentle old mare, gathering loose tools, hauling feed. She fumbled more than once. Her arms were weak from travel, and fear had a way of making hands clumsy. But Elias never barked, never rushed her. When she dropped a rope coil for the third time, she muttered, "I'm useless." "No," he said simply. "That's not how it looks." "That's how it feels," he corrected. "Two different things." She stared at him. No one had ever bothered to untangle her feelings from her worth before. He knelt beside a loose saddle strap, motioning for her to join him. "Here, hold this." Their hands brushed, accidentally, lightly. His skin was warm, rough in a way that somehow felt steady instead of threatening. She didn't pull away. He didn't either. "Clay's the kind of man who pushes fear into folks," Elias said quietly. "Makes them think they're smaller than they are. Don't let him shrink you." Her heart thumped against her ribs. "Why do you care?" He thought about that a long moment. When he did answer, his voice was even, but something old was hiding beneath it. An ache she didn't understand. "'Cause I know what it's like," he said. "To be looked at wrong, judged wrong, wanted gone." Lena's breath caught, not because of what he said, but because of the truth in it. Elias Booker, tall as a storm cloud, strong as old oak, moved like a man who'd carried too many ghosts for too long. She could feel it in the way he watched the road, in the way he flinched at certain silences. A man who knew loneliness well, a man who offered help but expected nothing in return. She looked at him a moment longer than she meant to. He noticed, glanced away as if the attention stung. Something tender bloomed quietly inside her. For the first time since the world took everything from her, Lena felt a tiny spark, small as a lantern flame, easy to snuff out, but real. Hope. By midday, the sun pressed hard on the ranch, turning dust into gold haze and making every chore feel twice as heavy. Lena wiped her brow with the back of her sleeve, surprised at how good honest work felt, even if her arms trembled and her muscles burned. Elias watched her without hovering. He moved around her like a steady shadow, close enough to catch her if she stumbled, far enough to let her believe she could stand on her own. That balance, it was new to her. Strange, comforting. When a feed sack ripped open and spilled grain across the barn floor, Lena gasped. I didn't mean... I'm sorry." "It's fine," Elias said immediately, already kneeling beside her. "A sack ain't worth more than you." No one had ever said that to her, not even her own kin. Her throat tightened. She ducked her head, afraid he'd see the tears prickling behind her eyes. But Elias didn't push. He just handed her a broom and helped her sweep, the two of them working shoulder to shoulder in quiet rhythm. After they finished, he nodded toward the far side of the ranch. "Come on, break's over." Lena followed, still fighting the warm ache his words had left in her. Beyond the barn stretched a small corral, and on the post hung an old rifle. She froze when she realized where he was leading her. "You're gonna learn to shoot," Elias said simply. Lena's stomach dropped. I don't think you need it," he said. "World's too sharp for someone without teeth." Fear skittered through her chest, but under it a thread of gratitude tugged. No one had ever taught her anything except how to stay out of the way, how to survive by being silent. "All right," she whispered. He handed her the rifle, adjusting her grip slowly, carefully, never touching more than needed. "Lean forward. Brace your shoulder. Rifle's got a bite." She nodded, even though her hands shook. The wood felt heavier than she expected. "Breathe in," Elias murmured. "Hold it. Now exhale slow." She followed. He stepped behind her, not touching, but close enough that she felt his warmth. The air around them shifted, tense not from fear, but something gentler, something neither of them knew how to name. "Now pull the trigger." The shot cracked like thunder. Lena cried out as the recoil slammed into her shoulder, stumbling back a step. Instantly, Elias caught her arms. "You all right?" Her chest heaved, her shoulder throbbed, and yet she laughed, breathless, shaky, alive. "I did it?" she asked. "You did," he said, the hint of a smile tugging at his mouth. For a heartbeat, they stood too close, his hands still on her arms, her breath mingling with his. Lena felt something bright flare in her ribs. Fear, hope, longing, all tangled. Elias released her gently and stepped back, clearing his throat like he needed the distance just to breathe right. "Let's try again," he said. She nodded. They practiced another hour, and each time she steadied the rifle. Each time she pulled the trigger without flinching. Something inside her rebuilt, brick by brick, breath by breath. By late afternoon, Rosie wandered up the hill with a basket. "Lunch," she called. "And don't you dare refuse it, Elias Booker. I saw you skip breakfast." Elias muttered, "I didn't skip. Rosie, don't start." Rosie grinned like a woman who absolutely would start. Mario followed, carrying a jar of lemonade like it weighed nothing. "Eat," Maria ordered Lena. "You look better, but better's not enough." Lena blinked. "You brought this for me?" "For both of you," Rosie said brightly, "but mostly for you. Elias eats like a ghost unless somebody forces him." Elias groaned. Rosie winked. They all sat under the shade of a slanted oak. Lena tried to hide how fast she ate, but Rosie noticed and filled her plate again without comment. Maria passed her a clean kerchief with a grunt that sounded annoyed but felt like affection. As they rested, Lena's gaze drifted to the horizon, wide, open, untamed. The world still scared her, but sitting here, with warm food and warmer company, something loosened inside her chest. Found family, a phrase she'd only ever heard in stories, felt almost possible. When the others returned to their chores, Elias lingered behind. He watched her tie back her hair with the ribbon Rosie had given her. The tiny gesture tightened something in his eyes. "What?" she asked softly. "Nothing," he said. "Just suits you." Heat rushed up her neck. She looked away, suddenly shy. That was when she felt the weight of her mother's turquoise ring, still tied to the leather cord Elias had braided for her that morning. He'd done it without calling attention to himself, handing it back to her quietly, like it wasn't the most thoughtful thing anyone had done for her in years. "Thank you," she whispered, touching it. He shrugged. "Didn't want you losing it." But something in his voice said more, that he understood what it meant to cling to the few pieces of your past you could still carry. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, Lena walked the perimeter of the ranch alone. Her fingers brushed the braided cord on her neck. Her steps slowed when she passed the carved fence post again. The H above two rivers, the mark that mirrored her mother's ring. A shiver ran up her spine. She didn't know what it meant yet. But she knew, deep, instinctive, that this ranch held a story older than her fear, older than Elias's silence, and older than the lies the town told. She glanced over her shoulder at Elias in the distance, sleeves rolled, fixing the rail of a fence with steady, patient strength. Something inside her whispered, "This place is trying to tell you something, and so is he." But she wasn't ready to ask, and Elias wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. For now, small kindnesses were enough. Kindness in dust. Kindness in silence. Kindness in the way a man who owed her nothing kept giving her everything he didn't know he still had. Lena hadn't stepped off a ranch property in months, not since her family died. But late the next morning, Rosie insisted she needed soap, better boots, and something that wasn't patched together out of fear and road dust. "You go with him," Rosie said, pointing a firm finger at Elias. "If she goes alone, half this town will try something stupid." Elias didn't look thrilled, but he nodded. "All right, but we're in and out, quick as we can." Lena tried to smile. "I'll be fine." "No," Rosie said bluntly. "You won't." So Lena climbed into the wagon beside Elias. He sat stiff as a fence post, hands gripping the reins. She studied the way his jaw tightened every time they passed another ranch on the outskirts. "You hate going into town," she said gently. "Town hates me first," he replied. She didn't argue. She'd seen it herself, how people looked at him like he was a trespasser on land they believed only belonged to them. She wondered how long he'd lived like that, how many times he'd swallowed anger just to keep the peace. Copper Reach looked different by daylight. Children ran down the streets. Merchants shouted prices. But as soon as Elias and Lena stepped down from the wagon, a hush rippled down the boardwalk. The whispers came next, soft at first, then sharper. That the girl from the saloon? She's staying with him? A white girl living under a black man's roof. Ain't right. Lena's stomach twisted. Elias didn't react. His face didn't change, but Lena could feel the tension rolling off him like heat. Inside the general store, things got worse. Mr. Talbot, the shopkeeper, eyed Elias with a thin-lipped sneer. "What do you want?" Elias ignored the tone. "Soap, salt, boots for her." Talbot's eyes slid to Lena. "You running out of respectable places to sleep, sweetheart? Didn't figure you'd fall that low." Lena froze. Shame hit her full in the chest. She felt the old instinct rising, to shrink, to apologize, to blame herself. Before she could speak, Elias stepped forward. "Watch your mouth." Talbot's smile was a toxin. "You keepin' her now? That what this is?" "She's under my protection," Elias said. "Oh, protection." Talbot laughed. "That what folks call it these days. Heard she's a virgin. Guess you get first pick." Lena went cold. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Talbot's voice twisted like a rusty knife. Elias didn't raise his voice, didn't lunge, didn't pull a gun. He simply said, "Say one more word, and you won't say another for a long time." Talbot paled, but he didn't back down. "Girl like that don't belong on your ranch. Ain't natural." Lena found her voice, thin but steady. "I'm not his property. I chose to go." "Even worse," Talbot muttered. Their eyes met. Lena, trembling. Elias, a wall of barely contained fury. "Take the boots," Elias said quietly. "We're leaving." Talbot didn't protest. He seemed relieved to have them gone. Outside, the air felt sharp. Lena hugged the parcel to her chest like a shield. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," Elias cut in gently. "They did." "But if I weren't with you—" He stopped walking, turned to face her. His voice was low, but every word hit like truth forged in fire. "Lena May Harper, listen to me. They'd treat me the same if you weren't here. I've been living in this town long enough to know hate don't need a reason. It just needs a target." Her eyes stung. "I don't want to make your life harder." "You make it less lonely," he said quietly. Lena felt something break open inside her, softly, painfully. She didn't know how to respond, so she didn't. She just stood there, clutching new boots and old fear, and tried not to cry. They were nearly back at the wagon when a deep voice called from the street. "Well now, Booker," Silas Kincaid drawled, stepping out of the sheriff's office like he owned the ground he walked on. "That's quite a sight." Elias stiffened. Lena instinctively stepped closer to him. Kincaid tipped his hat at her. "Miss Harper, heard you're taking refuge on Booker's land. Must be a mighty cozy arrangement." Lena swallowed. "I'm only there because—" "No need to explain," Kincaid interrupted smoothly. "A young woman alone needs options. I've got space in my establishments if you ever get tired of rough ranch life." Elias's hand curled into a fist. Kincaid leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a slick whisper meant only for Lena. "There's ways for a pretty little thing like you to earn her keep. Honest work, I promise." Something inside Lena snapped. Not anger, but clarity. She stepped back and said, "I'd rather starve." A flicker of annoyance passed over Kincaid's face before he regained his smile. "Suit yourself. But you and Booker be careful. Folks don't take kindly to arrangements like yours." He turned away, but the weight of his threat hung heavy behind him. Elias exhaled slowly. "You all right?" "No," Lena said honestly. "But I will be." He nodded once. On the wagon ride home, she held her new boots on her lap and stared at the horizon, mind heavy with fear and something fiercer: defiance. She knew one thing. If this town tried to crush Elias Booker, they'd have to crush her too. And for the first time since losing everything, she felt a seed of courage take root. Not because she was brave, but because someone looked at her like she mattered, and she refused to let the world strip that away again. Sheriff Avery caught up to them just as Elias guided the wagon toward the split in the road leading back to Solace Creek Ranch. He rode a tall bay horse, posture loose, expression too casual to be trusted. "Booker," he called, reining in beside the wagon. "Got a minute?" Elias didn't slow. "Don't reckon I do." Avery chuckled, the sound smug as spilled whiskey. "Town's been talkin'. Hard not to hear the racket when tongues get waggin' about a white girl sleepin' under your roof." Lena froze. Her hands tightened around the parcel in her lap. A familiar chill crawled up her spine, the kind that told her danger wasn't coming. It was already here. Elias finally stopped the wagon. "If you got something to say, Avery, say it plain." Sheriff Avery leaned forward in the saddle, eyes narrowing on Lena. "You sure you're with him of your own free will, miss? Folks think maybe he's persuaded you." Lena felt heat flare in her chest. "No one coerced me." Avery didn't look convinced. "Funny, 'cause Clay Redden swears he was just trying to help you the night Booker busted in like some damn hero." Elias's voice dropped. "You letting Clay stir up trouble again?" "Clay's a good man," Avery said smoothly. "Just drinks too much is all." Then he tipped his hat toward Lena. "You might want to reconsider who really means you harm." Lena's breath hitched. The words didn't land like a threat. They landed like a warning with barbs hidden underneath. Avery turned back to Elias. "Clay'll be out by sundown. A man like him don't stay locked up long. Not when he's kin to the people running this town." Lena's pulse spiked. Clay loose again. Clay watching. Clay waiting. Elias's jaw ticked. "He comes near her again. I'll put him back underground, where you won't be able to fish him out." Avery gave a thin smile. "Careful there. Talk like that's why folks don't want you in this town." Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Truth is, Booker, I seen that look in your eyes before." Elias stiffened. Avery's voice dropped to a slow, poisonous whisper. "Last time was the night the Harper place burned." Lena's blood went ice cold. She didn't breathe, didn't move, just stared at the sheriff, heart hammering in her throat. Avery straightened, pretending he hadn't just shattered the air between them. "You watch yourself now, both of you." He nudged his horse and trotted away down the dusty street, leaving silence behind him. Lena's mind spun. Harper, her name, her family, her past. And Elias Booker's eyes had flashed. Something dark, something haunted, when Avery said it. She swallowed hard. "Elias, what did he mean?" Elias flicked the reins abruptly. "Nothing worth repeating." "That's not an answer." He stared straight ahead, shoulders rigid. "He's trying to rile me up. That's what he does. But he Mentioned the Harper place, my home. Her voice trembled despite her effort to stay steady. Why would he say that to you unless you... Elias cut her off sharply. Lena, drop it. The words were firm, not unkind, but unyielding. She looked at him, at the man who'd saved her, fed her, protected her. The man who woke up before dawn to cut firewood so she wouldn't freeze. The man who'd handed her his only extra coat during the snow flurries. He'd become a shelter she'd never expected to find again. Now he felt 1,000,000 miles away. I just need to know, she whispered. Elias didn't answer. They rode the rest of the way in heavy silence, broken only by the creak of the wagon wheels. By the time they reached Solace Creek Ranch, Lena felt small, unsteady, like someone had kicked loose a stone at the top of a slope and it was rolling faster than she could chase it. When they reached the barn, Elias finally spoke, voice low, tight. Sheriff Avery is a liar, Lena. A coward who hides behind badges and whiskey. Don't believe a damn word he says. But you reacted, he winced. Because I know what he's trying to do. Turn you against me. Lena hugged her arms, feeling the earth tilt beneath her. Why would he want that? Elias hesitated. Because men like Avery and Kincaid, they don't like when someone they think is worthless starts protecting something they want. Lena blinked. What? What do they want? He didn't answer. A cold knot formed in her stomach. He climbed down from the wagon and turned to help her, but she hesitated. Only a second, but he saw it. The flicker of doubt she didn't mean to show. Something in his face shuddered. You're safe here, he said softly, though his eyes held a hurt he didn't voice. No matter what he says, I won't let anyone touch you. Lena stepped down, feet unsteady. I'm not afraid of you. That ain't what your eyes say. It's just Avery's words, the way he said them. I know, Elias murmured, but his voice carried a weight. He knew she was scared, not of him, but of the truth beneath Avery's whisper. She wanted to reach out, to say something, anything, to bridge the sudden gulf between them. But fear held her still. Fear of what she didn't know. Fear of what she might discover. As the sun began to sink behind the ridge, Lena stood in the yard of the only safe place she'd had in years and realized something terrifying. Safety could vanish with a single sentence, and Sheriff Avery had spoken one that she could not unhear. Lena barely slept that night. Sheriff Avery's whisper clung to her like cold smoke, threading into every breath, every thought. She stared at the rafters of the bunkhouse long after the lamps went out, hearing the words again and again. Last time I saw that look was the night the Harper place burned. By dawn, she made a decision that felt bigger than her fear. She would not stay silent anymore. Not about Clay, not about the town, and not about herself. When Sunday bells rang, she stepped out of the bunkhouse wearing Rosie's mended dress and Maria's borrowed shawl. Elias was saddling a horse, eyebrows drawing low when he saw her. Where you going? To the church, she said. People been talking about me, about you. I won't let them twist things anymore." He frowned, wiping dust off his hands. "Lena, that crowd ain't looking for truth. They looking for blood." "I know," she whispered, "but if I keep hiding, it only gets worse." Elias hesitated, jaw tight with worry. "Then I'm going with you." She shook her head. "Let me do this on my own. Just once." A flicker of fear crossed his eyes. Fear for her. But he stepped back, voice low. "I'll be right behind you." The Copper Reach Church was small, wooden, packed wall to wall with curious faces when Lena walked in. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. A few women pulled their daughters closer. Men leaned forward, whispering. She felt their judgment like stones thrown at her chest. Reverend Pike blinked in surprise. "Miss Harper, you wish to speak?" Lena swallowed hard. "Yes, I do." A murmur rippled through the pews. She walked to the front, palms damp, throat shaking. But she didn't falter. "Everyone here thinks they know what happened the night Clay Redden put a knife under my chin," she began, voice trembling but audible. "You've heard jokes, stories, things that make me out to be something dirty." A few men chuckled. Women stiffened. Lena steadied her breathing. "Clay wasn't protecting me. He was hunting me. And if Elias Booker hadn't walked in, I wouldn't be standing here today." The room hummed with disapproval. Mrs. Coulter hissed. "And you ran off to his ranch right after. How convenient." Lena's face flamed. "I went there because I had nowhere else to go, because he treated me like a human being." "That all he did?" a man called. Laughter followed. Reverend Pike slammed his Bible shut. "Enough!" But Sheriff Avery rose from the back row, smoothing his vest. "Now hold on. The lady's speakin'. And speakin' honest, I reckon." He walked forward slowly, each step calculated. "Miss Harper," he said, loud enough for all to hear, "did Booker take you from town against your will?" "No," Lena answered instantly. "But you did stay the night on his ranch?" "Yes, because—" "And he's the one bringing you food, clothes, boots?" Her pulse hammered. She sensed the trap too late. "It's not like that." Avery spread his hands. "Folks, what are we supposed to think here? A young white woman in the home of a single black man. For weeks? And now she stands defending him in God's house." Gasps, angry whispers. Someone muttered, "Disgrace." Another spat, "Unnatural." Lena stepped back, nausea rising. "I'm telling the truth, and I am too," Avery boomed. "Elias Booker is under suspicion for kidnapping, immoral conduct, and harboring a runaway woman." The church erupted. "What proof you got?" Rosie shouted from the doorway. She'd slipped in unseen, breathless with fury. Avery didn't even look at her. His word against hers, and just now she admitted everything we needed. Lena felt the world tilt. No, I didn't." Elias pushed through the crowd, storming into the aisle. "Avery, don't you touch her." His voice cracked like a shot. But the sheriff had backup. Two deputies grabbed Elias's arms. He didn't fight. but rage burned hot in his eyes. "Let him go!" Lena cried. Avery ignored her. "Elias Booker, you're under arrest pending investigation." People whispered approval. Some nodded, satisfied. Others looked away, ashamed but silent. Silence hurt worse than insults. Elias locked eyes with Lena as the deputies cuffed him. "This ain't your fault," he said softly. But she broke. "It is," she whispered, voice shattering. "I just wanted to make it right." "Lena," his tone gentled. "You spoke with courage. Don't regret that." Her hands shook violently. Tears blurred her vision. Everything she'd tried to fix had spun into ruin. Avery stepped close, whispering in her ear, "See what happens when you stir trouble? Now both of you will pay." She trembled. Elias strained against the deputies, face dark with fury. "Keep your hands off her, Avery," he growled. "Or what?" the sheriff taunted. "You're in irons, and she's next." Lena's heart caved in. This wasn't justice. It wasn't safety. It was a public execution without the rope. And worst of all, she realized she'd walked right into their snare. As the deputies dragged Elias out the church doors, Lena's knees buckled. Rosie caught her before she fell, whispering fiercely, "Girl, this town ain't your judge, and it damn sure ain't your home." But Lena couldn't hear anything except the sound of cuffs clanking against Elias's wrists, and the terrifying truth that she had just lost to the only person who'd ever chosen her without wanting something back. She hadn't meant to destroy him, but intent didn't matter. Only consequences did. And Copper Reach wanted blood. The jailhouse in Copper Reach was small. Just 2 cells, 1 desk, and the stale smell of old whiskey and older sins. But to Lena, it felt like the whole world had been swallowed by cold iron. Elias sat on the cot, wrists still red from the cuffs, head bowed as if he were bracing for another blow. The lamp outside his cell cast bars of gold and shadow over his face. Lena stood at the doorway, trembling. She'd forced her way in the second Reverend Pike, and Rosie dragged her away from the church. "I need to see him," she'd begged. "I need to see him now." Deputy Millen, soft-hearted and scared of Avery, finally let her in once the sheriff left for his nightly whiskey rounds. Now she stood only a few feet from Elias, but it felt like she was looking at him from the bottom of a cliff. He lifted his head slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to be," she whispered. "I had to see you. I had to tell you I'm sorry." "You didn't do nothing wrong," he said quietly. "But I made it worse." Elias stood, stepping close to the bars. His voice gentled. "You spoke your truth. That takes guts. You ain't responsible for how they twist it." Lena shook her head violently. "But you're in a cell because of me." He held her gaze. "I've been in worse places than this. This ain't the first time Copper Reach tried to break me down." Her heart squeezed. "I don't want them to break you. I can't." A heavy boot slammed the floor outside. The door creaked open. Silas Kincaid stepped inside like a man inspecting merchandise he already owned. Calm, certain, confident with cruelty. "Well now," he drawled. A touching little reunion. Lena stepped back instinctively. Elias bristled, hands curling into fists even though iron separated them. Kincaid removed his hat and brushed dust from the brim. Miss Harper, I believe we have unfinished business. I have nothing to say to you, she snapped. Oh, I think you do. He sauntered closer, eyes dark with satisfaction. Because now that Booker's out of the way, you're officially without protection. Elias lunged at the bars. If you lay one finger... Kincaid didn't even look at him. Relax, Booker. I'm not here to touch her. He smiled, slow, poisonous, only to inform her of her future. Lena's knees locked. My future? You'll be escorted out of town after Booker's hearing. Kincaid tapped the bars casually. Avery already agreed. We can't have you riling up the good folks of Copper Reach. No, she whispered. I'm not leaving him. Kincaid's smile widened. Oh, sweetheart, you don't have a choice. She backed up until her shoulders hit the wall. Then Kincaid said something that turned the air into ice. You're the last Harper left, after all. Elias froze. Lena's breath left her body. What? What did you just call me? Kincaid's eyes gleamed. The last Harper, last kin to the homestead up by Solace Creek. Last mouth who could challenge the land papers my dear father forged with help from some obliging witnesses. Elias went pale. Kincaid stepped closer to Lena, lowering his voice. Thought we burned out every trace that night. Guess your daddy hid you well. Lena couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Her mind flashed. The caught mock with the carved H, the twin streams, exactly like her mother's sketch, the turquoise ring, Sheriff Avery whispering about the Harper place. Her world knit itself together with horrifying clarity. You, she swallowed hard, voice breaking. You were there, the night my home burned. Kincaid smiled like the devil himself. Of course I was. My father wanted the land. I just made it happen. Elias staggered back as if someone had struck him. You son of... But Kincaid cut him off with one more blade of truth. And Booker here? He signed the witness papers that let us claim it. Lena's heart stopped. She turned to Elias, eyes wide with betrayal and disbelief. Elias, is that true? His face was agony. Lena, did you sign anything for Kincaid about Harper land? He gripped the bars with white knuckles. I didn't know what it was. He said it was a transfer from a rancher leaving town. He closed his eyes. Lena, I swear to you, I didn't know. But the damage had been done. Her voice cracked like shattered glass. You helped them take everything from me. Elias's breath hitched. Lena, if I'd known, if I'd had any clue... Kincaid clapped mockingly. Lovely. Lovers' quarrel. Shame it won't matter soon. Booker's likely to hang once Avery's done with him. Lena spun on him. You're lying. All of this is to ruin him. Kincaid leaned in. No, darling. The only one ruined here is you. Deputy Millen finally mustered courage. Mr. Kincaid, you need to leave. Kincaid tipped his hat, satisfied. Miss Harper, your escort will arrive at dawn. Don't run. Don't fight. It'll only end worse. He walked out, boots echoing like gunshots. Silence swallowed the jail. Lena turned back to Elias, her savior, her shelter, now recast in the worst possible light. His voice broke first. Lena, you gotta believe me. I didn't know, I didn't. But Lena backed away, tears streaming. I don't know what to believe. He stepped closer to the bars, desperate. Let me take the blame. Let me face whatever comes. You get out of here safe. Her heart shattered all over again. Even now, he tried to protect her. But love and betrayal braided so tightly together, she couldn't separate them. I need to think, she whispered. I can't breathe in here. She turned and fled the jailhouse, hand over her mouth, tears falling faster with each step. Behind her, Elias pressed his forehead against the cold iron and whispered her name like a prayer that wouldn't reach heaven. And outside, Lena realized something far worse than fear. The truth had finally found her, and it might destroy the only person she'd ever cared for since the night the Harper place burned. Lena didn't remember walking back to Reverend Pike's parsonage. Only the numb, weightless feeling, like she'd left her own body somewhere in the dust outside the jail. She sat at the small kitchen table, fingers digging into the wood, eyes staring through the lamplight. Rosie paced. Maria whispered prayers in Spanish, and Reverend Pike stood by the door like a man expecting judgment to walk in at any moment. Child, he murmured gently, tell us what happened. But Lena couldn't form words. Every time she opened her mouth, she saw Elias's face stricken, aching behind the bars. Kincaid said he signed the papers. He helped take my home. Elias, my Elias. She pressed a hand to her forehead. I can't. I don't know. A knock shattered the silence. Old Ben slipped in, the oldest ranch hand in the territory, hair white as winter mesquite. He held a weathered envelope in one trembling hand. I heard the rumblin' in town, he said. Figured it was time this came out. Reverend Pike closed the door behind him. Ben, what have you got there? Ben placed the envelope on the table in front of Lena, voice shaking. Proof of everything they stole from the Harpers. I've been carrying this near 10 years. Lena's breath stalled. Rosie gasped. Ben, you could have been killed keeping that. Maybe so, Ben whispered. But a man's got to live with himself. And I wasn't going to let Silas Kincaid wipe an entire family off the earth without somebody remembering the truth. Lena's fingers trembled as she slid the brittle papers out. A hand-drawn map. Marked boundaries. A signature she knew by heart. Her father's. 2 streams forming a fork. The little ridge with the old cottonwood. And the carved initial, H. Her chest clenched. This is my family's land. Ben nodded. Harper Homestead. Never stopped being yours. Reverend Pike pointed to the bottom corner. Those initials, S.K., Silas Kincaid. He forged them, Ben said. and got the whole thing legalized with false witnesses. One of them was Booker. Lena flinched so hard she nearly dropped the papers. Maria touched her hand softly. Mija, look again. Ben pulled another sheet from his coat. A sworn statement in clumsy handwriting. Look here, he said, voice fragile. This is the part folks forget. The statement read, Witness believed papers were presented lawfully. No knowledge of forced transfer. No knowledge of violence committed that night. Lena blinked hard. He didn't know. Course he didn't, Ben said. Elias Booker may be a hard man, but he ain't cruel, and he ain't a thief. Rosie crossed her arms. But if he signed it, he still tied himself to the Kincaids. Ben sighed, sinking into a chair. That's the guilt he's carried. I seen him wander up toward the old homestead for years. Never set foot close, just stand there, looking like a man facing ghosts he couldn't name. Lena stared at the papers until the ink blurred. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. Reverend Pike pulled another envelope from his coat. A sealed letter. This was left with me the night of the fire. Anonymous. I never knew who, until now. He opened it, placed the contents next to the map. A confession. A description of the night the Harper place burned, and one chilling sentence. One of the riders hesitated. The tall one. The black man with the quiet voice. He said he wanted no part in killin'. They threatened him. He left before the fire. Lena covered her mouth. Elias. He had been there. But he had tried to stop them. He'd left. Walked away from the murder even if he'd walked straight into guilt afterward. Rosie exhaled shakily. Lord have mercy. He's been punishing himself ever since. Maria whispered, He saved her because he couldn't save her family. Lena felt something hot and terrible surge up inside her. Not anger, not betrayal, but grief so sharp it sliced open everything she'd buried. He carried that, she breathed, all these years, alone. And now, Reverend Pike said gently, you know the whole truth. Lena rose slowly, clutching the papers to her chest. I have to tell him. I have to. Ben grabbed her wrist. Careful, girl. The truth cuts. His eyes softened. But it also heals. Lena hesitated. He might hate me. For knowing. For bringing this out. No, Rosie said firmly. But you might hate yourself if you stay silent. Lena swallowed hard. Outside, a loud shout echoed from down the street. Another. Then the unmistakable rumble of a crowd gathering. Maria peered through the curtain. The sheriff's rallying folks in the square. Kincaid's there, too. Lena's heart lurched. This is it. They're going after him. Reverend Pike straightened, determination shining through his age. Then we go too. Lena gathered every paper, every map, every scrap of truth, and held them tight. Her voice trembled, but her spine straightened with fire. They stole my home, she whispered. They killed my family, and they nearly broke the only good man left in this cursed town. Rosie squeezed her arm. Then finish it, honey. Lena stepped into the storm outside, wind whipping her hair like a battle cry. For the Harpers, she whispered, and for Elias Booker. She walked toward the square, and toward the reckoning Copper Reach had avoided for far too long. The Copper Reach Square had never held so many people. Men with rifles, women clutching children, teenagers climbing rooftops for a better look, and at the center, where the fountain used to stand, they'd raised a wooden frame tall as a barn door, a gallows. Lena froze at the sight. Her breath came sharp, painful. Reverend Pike gripped her shoulder. Don't falter now, child. Kincaid stood on the platform, coat flapping in the wind like a vulture's wings. Sheriff Avery stood beside him, reading a list of fabricated charges as if reciting scripture. Harboring a white woman with ill intent, witness to unlawful transfers, resisting arrest. Elias Booker was dragged forward in iron cuffs. His lip was split, his shirt torn, but his back was straight as ever. Lena stepped out from the crowd. Stop! The square erupted in murmurs. Avery's face blanched. Kincaid's narrowed. Elias's eyes found her instantly, wounded but steady. Lena, no, he mouthed. Go. But she didn't flee. She walked, shaking but determined, straight toward the gallows steps. I have proof, she announced, raising the envelope of papers high. Proof of the Harper land, proof of forged deeds, proof of murder. Boos rose from the crowd, but then Maria and Rosie pushed forward beside her, flanking her like shields. Reverend Pike lifted his Bible. Let the girl speak. Reluctantly, Avery lowered his paper. Lena climbed the first step. Her knees trembled. Her heart pounded like thunder. But her voice didn't break. My family didn't sell our land, she said. It was stolen, burned, and the Kincaids forged every document to take Solace Creek for themselves. She unfolded the map, letting the wind catch its edges. This is the Harper homestead, and this, she held up the turquoise ring, is my mother's mark. The crowd stirred, confusion mixing with doubt. Kincaid barked a laugh. Fabrications. No one here will take the word of a frightened girl living with her. My turn. Maria stepped up, voice shaking with long-buried fury. Tell them, Silas. Tell them how your father forced my cousin into that fire. Tell them how you held a gun on me when I tried to run. Gasps rippled. Old Ben raised his cane. I saw the flames from my pasture. And I saw your riders, Silas Kincaid. Saw your damn brand on the saddles. Kincaid snarled. Lies! But for the first time, the crowd didn't look convinced. Then a sharp metallic clink cut the air. On a nearby rooftop, a rifle cocked. Clay Redden crouched low, eyes black with revenge. Ain't letting a whore ruin my town. His gun aimed directly at Lena. Elias reacted before thought, before breath, before life itself. He lunged. The gunshot split the air. Lena screamed as Elias took the hit full in the side, spinning off the platform and crashing to the dirt below. "Elias!" She threw herself to his side, hands shaking wildly as she pressed on the bleeding wound. His breath came ragged. His eyes fluttered. Up above, Clay cursed, reloading. Reverend Pike shouted, "He's on the roof!" A sudden courage, raw, furious, sparked through the crowd. Half a dozen townsfolk surged forward, guns rising toward the rooftop assassin. For the first time in Copper Reach, people weren't looking at Elias Booker like a threat. They were looking at him like a man who'd taken a bullet for someone innocent. Lena bent low, her hands covered in his blood, whispering fiercely, "Stay with me, Elias. Please. I choose you. I choose you." His fingers curled around hers, weak but sure. The balance in Copper Reach had finally begun to shift. Clay Redden scrambled across the rooftop, blood trailing from Elias's thrown knife embedded in his upper arm. The townsfolk fired warning shots, shouting for him to drop his weapon. Clay slipped on a loose shingle, his boots skidding toward the edge. "Get back!" someone yelled, but it was too late. Clay tumbled off the roof, half falling, half clawing, until one hand caught the crossbeam holding a lantern. The wood groaned under his weight. Below him, the crowd scattered in panic. "Help!" Clay screamed. "Somebody help me!" Lena knelt beside Elias, trembling. He was fighting for breath, blood darkening his shirt. But when Clay's panicked cries reached him, Elias forced one eye open. "Clay," he rasped. "Forget him," Lena begged, pressing harder on his wound. "You'll bleed out. Stay with me." But Elias pushed himself up, not standing, not even sitting fully, just enough to see the doomed man dangling over the square like a broken puppet. The crowd watched, unsure whether to intervene or let justice deliver itself. Sheriff Avery muttered, "He deserves whatever his maker decides." Elias shook his head faintly. "No. No one deserves to die like that." The words sounded like they were dragged from the deepest part of him, the part still haunted by the Harper fire, by guilt that had lived in his bones for years. He reached for the fallen sheriff's revolver nearby. "Elias! No, what are you doing?" Lena cried. "End in this," he whispered. Despite blood loss, despite pain that would have buckled any other man, Elias steadied the barrel, not at Clay, but at the beam Clay was hanging from. "Booker!" Sheriff Avery barked. "You fire that gun, and this crowd—" But Elias didn't hesitate. He fired. The bullet struck the crossbeam, not to break it, but to dislodge the lantern hook above it. The metal jerked free, dropping just enough slack for Clay to scramble onto a lower ledge, where two men grabbed his arms and hauled him to safety. Clay collapsed on the ground, sobbing angrily. "You should have let me fall," he spat. Elias's voice was a faint whisper. "Not my way." The crowd fell utterly silent. Mercy, unexpected, undeserved, had spoken louder than any bullet. Sheriff Avery stared at Elias as if seeing him for the first time. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he unclipped his badge. Shame washed over his face. "I'm done protectin' devils," he said quietly. He turned to Kincaid, whose face had gone ashen. "Silas Kincaid, you're under arrest for arson, land fraud, coercion, and attempted murder." Kincaid sputtered. "This is madness! That land is mine, it's all mine, you can't—" "Yes, I can," Avery snapped. "And the good people here finally see who the real outlaw is." Two deputies seized Kincaid by the arms. For once, he didn't smirk. His eyes darted to Lena, fearful, hateful. "You think this town will side with you?" he snarled. Lena met his gaze, lifting the turquoise ring high so the whole crowd could see. "They already have." The murmurs swelled, this time not with gossip or scorn, but with solidarity. She turned back to Elias, falling to her knees just as he sagged against the post, dizzy from the pain. "Stay with me," she whispered fiercely. "Look at me, Elias. Look at me." He lifted his gaze, and for the first time, she saw no walls, only truth. "You said you choose me." His voice cracked. "Even after everything?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I choose you because I see you. All of you." He exhaled shakily, eyes fluttering. "Then I can rest easy," he whispered. "Don't you dare," she choked, gripping his hand. "We're not done, not even close." Rosie shoved through the crowd with a rag and strong hands. Maria followed with herbs, already directing people like a battlefield nurse. "Back up," Rosie commanded. "Give the man air." The town obeyed. Lena stayed right beside him, refusing to let go. Elias Booker had given a man like Clay Redden mercy, and in doing so, he'd earned Copper Reach's respect and Lena's heart in full. But the night was not over, and the future of Solace Creek Ranch and their lives would be decided with the sunrise. 2 years later, Copper Reach no longer whispered when Lena Harper walked down Main Street. Folks tipped their hats, children waved. Maria's bakery spread cinnamon in the air every morning, and Rosie ruled the new dress shop with iron pins and soft hands. The biggest change stood at the edge of the valley, where Solace Creek ran bright and steady. A new ranch sign swung gently in the breeze. Harper Booker Homestead. A turquoise stone set right in the center. Elias had insisted on carving the letters himself, slow strokes of a steadying hand. "Your name should come first," he'd told her. "It always should have been yours." Now he stood on the porch, arm strong around her waist, healed scar beneath his shirt, a quiet testament to the day Copper Reach changed. In the yard, Rosie chased a giggling toddler, dark curls, bright eyes, a little boy found half-starved on the trail months after the trial. They'd taken him in without hesitation. The town called him Sunset Honey, because he'd come into their lives the night the sky burned gold. Lena leaned into Elias, heart full in a way she'd once believed impossible. "Do you ever regret staying?" she asked. Elias kissed her temple, voice warm as dusk. "I regret every day before you, nothing after." She laughed softly, tears glowing. "Elias Booker, you're home to me." "And you," he whispered, pulling her close, "are the truth I waited my whole life to find." The sun dipped behind the red ridge, lighting the valley with honeyed gold. Their son squealed, Rosie hollered, Maria laughed. A family, chosen, healed, whole. At long last, the Harper fire had gone out, and in its place, something brighter had taken root. Thank you, dear listener, for riding with us through this journey of danger, love, and redemption. Stories like Lena and Elias's remind us that it's never too late to find hope, to heal, or to choose family. No matter how life has weathered us, if this tale touched your heart, please give it a like so more folks can find it. And if you'd enjoy more gentle Western stories filled with courage and tenderness, be sure to subscribe. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share what part stayed with you the most. Your voice matters here.